First of all, good afternoon and welcome to the last panel. I'm very glad to be together with my colleagues panel today and to share with you some experience, and not just experience, also because I preparing before some question, but when I see the previous panel, I said let us change a little bit and to put in a good way and to be faster and dynamic like digital payments. For this reason, I want to start it with my colleagues in good way to create a bridge between the industries and also the academia level. Because most of us, we understand digital means trust, means fast, means identity, and a lot of misinformation. And for this reason, it's important each of us to share with us experience in different. And first question, of course, it's how do you maintain this trust when speed become the default, the standards? It's one of the questions for you, dear panelists. Who want to start?
Being a compliance vendor or representing a company that delivers systems that cover
And sorry, few information about yourself, because it's better the people know each other here. To create a network, to create a bridge of network today.
Thank you. My name is Daniel Georgescu. I'm the CEO and co-founder of ClearData. We're a RegTech company. We work with over 40 institutions in 4 countries, covering subjects as AML, KIC, KYC, and the part of transaction monitoring. So in terms of speed, in the world of instant payments, these subjects that I just mentioned become quite a bit of a challenge in terms of providing a transaction in under 8 seconds. So basically having to update all the system and all the compliance chain of systems to provide the decision in under those 8 seconds, do it properly, and now leverage the new technologies of AI agents and machine learning models on an infrastructure that doesn't always support this kind of models at scale, because as we all know, unfortunately, on-premise in our region does not contain GPUs, or we're not that big of a fan of them because of the cost. So now this is all becoming a very big challenge. But I think there are vendors out there, such as our company, that are beginning to integrate all of this into single systems to properly tackle the challenges that come with this kind of speed in this new era and new market we live in.
Thank you so much, Daniel. If I may.
Good afternoon also from my side. I'm Cerasela Baiculescu. I'm Country General Manager of IBM Romania and Moldova. And I'm also wearing a second hat as part of MCM Board of Directors. So you initiated the conversation today about trust, which I think is the biggest currency in relationship with our customers. The trust in a world in which uncertainty is growing, in which I believe that uncertainty became recently an opportunity rather than a challenge, since we are noticing that usually industries are advancing in a span of 3 months, so we don't speak of years but of months and sometimes of days, and also in a world in which we need to act with speed. We speak of instant payments, and we also need to scale. So in order to do that, there are a lot of things to be handled on the table, and it's about the way we approach it. Technology is only one component. Recently, we are seeing that technology is not lateral to the conversation, but became central to the business models, and banking sector is definitely one of the sectors that has a high adoption rate. But it needs to be complemented with the mentality changed within the people we are working with on a daily basis.
Thank you so much. I appreciate.
Thank you. So, Mircea Bucureceanu, Chief Risk Officer, Raiffeisen Bank Romania. Trust, right? Of course, as you know, this is our main intangible asset, right? So it cannot be a bank without the trust of our customers. So we have nothing else. Of course, keeping up the trust, it's not easy. in if the speed is very high. And actually what we see currently, it's a kind of a tension between certain expectations for speed and certain expectation for driving very safely at high speed. And I think this is the challenge we have today. On the other hand, the cure is the same. I think banks in the last 500 years did the same. We are investing and investing and investing and transforming and investing and transforming.
I appreciate.
Hopefully it
please.
turns a profit one day.
Actually, if you are looking to the figures, I think we are pretty decent. We are not, compared to other industries, maybe it's not the most profitable industry you can be in. On the other hand, I think you can put together a decent business model at the end of the day.
I suppose when we mention it, we invest a lot. I'm from academia environment, and all the time we talk about innovation, challenges, we adapt to satisfy some need analysis. Could you please tell us, because you're coming from the bank system, what is your opinion about this partnership between the academia and research innovative component and banks to satisfy finally the needs from end users?
Okay, so I think this is an area where we have a lot of opportunities to develop. I think currently we are at a relatively low level, at least in Romania. But if we are looking, for example, to the US, where this type of partnership between Wall Street and the large universities is very strong, I think we can learn a lot. We are starting to work together. I think both sides need to make some steps, and we need to meet somewhere in the middle. But I think, and you are very right in pointing it out, I think this is a huge opportunity because at this moment it's not very much used.
I appreciate, and I pass the floor to the next panel.
Thank you very much. My name is Cosmin Lazar. I'm CTO at Token Payment Services. Yes, when you talk about trust, I think this is the quintessence of this kind of business where you operate with people's money. So I think without trust, you are out of the business. And for us, I think having the trust or keeping the trust means that we are still in control no matter what happens. Sometimes you might have some issue. Technology brings this. It's normal when you change, when you grow, when you innovate, to have also some, a little bit of let's say, unexpected events, but all the time you have to be in control and you have to have a very good traceability. You have to be able to prove what happened, even if this is a post-mortem analysis, but that needs to be there. It's not acceptable not to understand what happened to the money. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Armin Kammer. I'm actually trying to bridge academia and practice. So I'm holding a professorship in law at Webster Vienna Private University in Austria, and I'm also off counsel with DLA Piper, an international law firm. And I used to have almost 20-year experience in the asset management industry. So, as I said, trying to kind of bridge these things. Let me start with the following. I think probably also in Romanian, and I don't speak not that much Romanian, only the bad words, anyhow. But there is this kind of common saying, belief is good and trust is better, right? And I think that's important to take into consideration. Why? Because at the end of the day, and I'm pretty sure you have not intended that as a moderator, but unfortunately I have to bring all of you guys back to something that we have discussed extensively today, and that is regulation. Okay? Why? When I started in my crazy young years to kind of write about banking law and comparative international banking law and the like, banking law was comparably modest in size. Okay? And I'm not talking about all the excesses of the Basel framework and the like, but when we currently look at what we would kind of consider banking law, also from an academic, dogmatic perspective, then banking law is obviously, among others, covering payment law. And you can go even so far, just think of DORA, and that brings us back to our topic, that at the end of the day, we're already talking about tech law. So consequently, from an academic point of view, you can actually ask the question, what is a bank? Is the bank a traditional bank in the environment, at least I grew up, you're much younger, so my original idea of the bank was, as it was mentioned in one of the previous panels, well, if you need some money, you have to go to this institution over there, you have a little bit of a chit-chat with the boy or the girl behind the counter, and if you're lucky, you get some of your own money back.
Professor, for you, I have a particular questions. Who protect the ecosystem in payments? Who protect this system?
The protection. Well, let me just first maybe finish the initial point, and that was like the traditional way of how we thought about banking. Nowadays, just think of neobanks, it's de facto a tech company which holds a banking license. And there for me, also in the both academic thinking as well as when I'm just advising players to obtain licenses, is the crucial point today. Are we talking about a bank in the traditional sense or a payment service company in the traditional sense that is asking to obtain a license? Or is it, and currently I have something like this on the plate, is it de facto a tech company that wants to be a bank, a payment service institution, or if you want to expand it even further, a crypto asset service provider? And to make it even worse, where's actually the difference between a payment service provider, a crypto asset service provider, an investment firm, and potentially a bank?
Because
and if that is still not clear, then at least a few of us probably know some motivated PhD students that probably write the thesis on that.
Professor, because you're coming from academia, you know multidisciplinary, it's our key all the time. Also today we have it, our diversity in our panel, and I address, with your permission, the next question. This question, who protect us? Also the system, also the end users, and when we talk about system, we talk in the multi-actors level, and we try to have in different, because it's a huge data, you work with a lot of data, also in research we have it a large scientific database, and for this reason, who protect the payment system in special? Because we have this cybersecurity and digital identity title of our panel. And let's close a little bit for that.
Well, if you start conceptually, then you would first say the main reason of regulation is to prevent market failure, and therefore, coming back to the protection aspect, regulation was at the beginning pretty much just about, let's call it consumer protection in the wide sense. Then we had something that was called the global financial crisis, and that made us realize that there's something else out there as well, which is financial stability. And currently, if you just kind of review more or less literature on that, it's a combination of consumer protectionist rationales and financial stability rationales that kind of justify regulatory intervention. That does not answer your question, because there is, in my view, still a loophole there, and that is, what are we doing actually at the intersection of regulation and non-regulated entities? And that's exactly where tech comes in. So therefore, to be fairly blunt, regulation may not necessarily be the answer. Why? Because regulation can only be the answer if it also has jurisdiction and scope. And if you are acting as a non-regulated entity to perform a regulated-like business, just think of fintechs and the like, if you are not regulated per se, then you immediately have room for arbitrage, and that's where me as a lawyer comes in, then we exploit the arbitrage. So consequently, that is not satisfactory, but at least from a conceptual perspective, and also to be a little bit provocative for the other panelists, that would at least be my starting point.
please.
Yeah, may I add here, because you made this connection already in the previous answer, you specified that what is a bank today looks more like a tech company with a license. And I think this is very true. And to answer specifically to your question, I think basically the real protection that we have is to actually understand the data. If we do not understand the data, we can't protect. And no law can protect us. We have the laws, they are very good because they set the framework. And we have the procedures to tell us how to act. But if we do not understand the data, we will just miss it. So there is no protection there. We really need to have enough information available to really see what is happening in our systems, in our processes, in the execution of these payments. We need to understand this now in times of milliseconds, so very fast, compared to what happened previously when we were talking about more traditional way of doing the payments.
Yes, but if we come back to the partnership between the industries and the environment, the academia, the consumers associations, why not? Because we don't talk just to take it advantage for different market. It's very important to associate, and this is a moment for the banks again to intervene. And
what I would say in terms of protection, I think there are 3 lines of defense. Yeah, let's use the regulatory. So 3 lines of defense. The first is you as individual. Yeah, the best protection needs to come from you, and we as a society we should not forget to promote this. Yeah, because you are responsible for your action. So this is one. Of course, you need to get supported with access to information, data, education, tools, and so on and so forth, but the first level of protection is you. The second level of protection is your partner. In our case, for example, the payment service provider, the bank, whoever, because in a business relationship, a normal business relationship, you would like to protect your partner. And this is also part of our business, trying to protect our customers. So this is, and the third is the protection at the society level. So society is building up also a protection framework by issuing regulations, licensing requirements, so on and so forth. But this is the third line of defense. But the first 2 are also very important. And we should not think that, as it was mentioned, that issuing regulations you are done. This is one part, important part, that this is one part of the story. The other part is the behavior of the players, and is also the personal responsibility, which is also very important.
And with this regulation, because you mentioned it, each of you mentioned it about the regulation, the stability, what kind of risk do you think exists in digital era with a lot of agent AI, with a lot of solution, with tech solution? What kind of risk do you think, and what kind of measures to limit this risk exist in different entities which you represent in this panel?
I will come back first of all to your previous comment related to the convergence between academia and the business sector, which I think it's essential to advancement of technology. And I think currently the discussion is not about one sector and tech, it's about what we do jointly. For example, in the most emergent technologies like quantum technologies, we are having currently more than 300 companies and academias joining us in different squads and analyzing particularly cases from which are relevant to each and every industry. So it's always about a partnership. Now, going back to risk, indeed the most important denominator is data, and indeed the speed is bringing an additional risk, as I said, is also bringing an opportunity. If we speak of instant payments, we are noticing right now that more than 80% of the cybersecurity attacks are coming on cloud-based infrastructures which rely on the fundamentals and represent the fundamentals of instant payments. So for this, we need to have a cybersecurity posture. We need technology, and investment is good. So thank you, Mircea, for pointing this out. Actually, studies are showing that only in the last 4 months, in terms of AI, we see a 90% increase in terms of investment. But investment is not enough if we don't have a strategy that we put into execution. And I think the biggest challenge that we see, especially in banking system, where we currently notice that we have roughly every bank or an average has 114 solutions and works in parallel with 42 vendors. The challenge comes from managing all these vendors, and consequently it comes with the imperious need to have a platformized approach rather than siloed one.
I appreciate, thank you.
I fully agree with Sarah. This is a huge issue in terms of having siloed systems that do not communicate with each other. Legacy systems are becoming quite a bit of a risk in terms of keeping up with the developments that you need to process this kind of volumes at this kind of speeds. Applying AI agents to legacy systems is sometimes quite hard. You need to do some upgrades there in order to have the capabilities to connect to these systems and to actually get the data, process it, do automatic triage or whatever you're aiming to do in order to reduce the volume or raise the speed of processing of these alerts. This is obviously requiring quite a huge investment in the side of the financial system, whether we talk about banks or other regulated entities. Also, the regulators are facing a challenge in actually understanding the new systems that are being built and actually having a no black box approach and explaining different AI embeddings and different AI integrations that are going to happen in this new wave of systems that providers have to build in order to face off with the risks and aid the system in actually dealing with this kind of risks.
Thank you so much.
I agree with my colleagues, and I want just to add another dimension to the silos of approach. So just to answer your question, I think the biggest risk is that we continue to stay isolated, that we continue to work kind of independently outside of a data exchange, of a partnership that could make us stronger. When we talk about isolation and silos, we should not only talk about systems, but we should talk, if we refer to our bank entities here, also about isolation inside that very own bank. For example, we have a team for fraud that in order to reach the IML team, they, I don't know, exchange some emails. Yeah? They don't have visibility, they don't react in real time. They have processes that take time, they consume time. And I think in addition, we really need to bring down these silos is also intercompanies, because we need to be able to learn from each other's experience. And we need to also be able to share these experiences, to share the data that we use, and to also kind of maybe use some sort of common denominators like I don't know, we didn't touch it yet, but there will be identity wallet coming.
Yes.
Yeah? So I think this is a good step forward where we could benefit from like a common tool that we all trust in the market, that we can use also not for our own advantage, but also for the advantage of the clients.
I fully agree with what you have just said. However, I want to play a little bit devil's advocate, but obviously the professor has to do that, right? What are we actually talking about here? At the end of the day, we're talking about a few meta issues that remain unsolved, and at the end of the day, provide us with a very ambivalent, let's say, environment. What does that mean in details? First of all, what is risk? Risk is typically something that is understood that has the entry of an event with a certain probability. That's why all the mathematicians in the room are happy, because they can measure it somehow. Is life full of risks? Well, yes, but there's another component out there which tends to be completely underestimated, and that is uncertainty. And uncertainty compared to risk is exactly not measurable, but we do know that it's somehow out there and it may or may not pop up. So consequently, if uncertainty becomes a reality, then it becomes a risk. Why am I telling this story? Given my age, I have seen a substantial increase in regulatory requirements with respect to risk management. Regulation even went so far and had at the beginning barely any rules on risk management. Today's risk management rules are as complicated as some PhD thesis. And consequently, all of us that are about to implement that stuff into practice are kind of strangled and to a certain extent challenged by how we do that. And then you even have to go a step further. How do we explain that now to our customers, to our clients, to our partners? Right? So consequently, since we become more granular by, for example, assessing different risk patterns, the more complex the whole thing gets. And that brings us back to exactly what you have said, that at the end of the day, we as a whole, probably at the European level, and I know it's a challenge, have to work on something that is called like an adaptive system in which we all at least barely understand each other. And that cannot necessarily only be triggered by regulation, but exactly by what our colleague has said at the beginning, that starts with our own behaviors. And that's why we have this free line of defense models. So we have to kind of integrate that and make all the players in the system aware of for what purpose we actually are doing that, because we know exactly that there will be, let's be blunt, a few black sheep out there that try to kind of optimize it for their own good, which typically is then to the detriment of the system.
Because we have a limited time, we try to...
But
yes.
I want to comment, if we have to stay strictly to the payments, because otherwise we
for
can speak...
payments, for this reason, identity and responsibility in the...
I think, and here I have a risk definition that you like. Risk actually it's exposure to uncertainty.
Yeah,
exactly. So, in principle, if you are looking to the payments and digital identity, you have a number of challenges, let's put it this way. Yeah? On one side, on the customer, it's to be assumed that identity theft will skyrocket. Yeah? With the current capabilities of artificial intelligence, producing fake identities or synthetic identities, synthetic personas, it's something that we will see very soon. In the United States, it's already there for many years. It will come to us as well. So this is one big problem or challenge. Second, it's the rather heterogeneous character of the population in European Union in terms of financial education. So we are trying to build up a kind of unitary European framework, but with very different population profiles from a pure financial education standpoint. And not only financial education, but digital education as well. Yeah, so if you are looking to this, and one of the risks is trying to push a certain framework on an unprepared population. And this is something that we need to be mindful. Now, moving to the banks. For the banks, I think it was mentioned, the legacy systems moving from to real-time data, being capable of streamlining the architecture, cutting down the silos, all are fine. What I would add on top of that would be the fact that banks have many customers with very different profiles. So for us, the challenge is to be able to provide an environment which is attractive for cutting-edge technology type of a customer, but also to less technologically prone customers. So we need, especially for universal banks. So here we need to be capable of diversifying our capabilities so to cover these very different types of customers from technology acceptance perspective. And this is a big challenge. The next one, artificial intelligence, yeah, because it was mentioned. Yes, this is a huge opportunity. I strongly believe that this is a huge opportunity. I think it will make the difference between various players and not the artificial intelligence itself, because this is just a technology. It's about the change capability of the organization.
And so, what about responsibility?
Responsibility. I think responsibility, it's something that
especially in digital payments.
Responsibility is something which is on one side quite clearly regulated, so here is not something that it's very personal, so because I would avoid this very personal interpretation of responsibility. This is something that we don't like to see, and I think it's pretty well solved, and I think with PSD3 this will be further enhanced as a responsibility. But what I see also as a challenge, and I think you touched the subject earlier, I think one of the challenges is that we are still working a lot in isolation, especially when discussing about anti-fraud and AML topics. And here, most probably at the society level, the best outcome would be for us to find a way to join the efforts, and it was the example brought by Mr. Gheța earlier with Raw Alert, which is a very good step in that direction, because with artificial intelligence, we need data. So we need to be able to put the data together, of course, obeying all the anti-competition rules and so on. So, yeah? We need to put all the data together and have an end-to-end perspective of how the market, because what we should not compete as banks, we should not compete which is the best bank in anti-money laundering. Mm-hmm. Yeah? This is an industry ambition to be good in this. Yeah? And this is a challenge, how we are creating also this industry level framework to move ahead.
I think, dear colleagues, each of you take a lot of measures to limit this type of fraud, especially in digital payments. But I have the question directly for Professor, because you are in law component. What kind of measures do you think it's possible to take it to limit this fraud, especially in digital payments, and when we have it fast transaction in second moment, each of second we need to cover some risk, to limit some fraud, to take measures?
Look, fraud is as old as mankind, because fraud basically means you're tricking somebody else. So consequently, since mankind, humans are tricking each other. Right? That may or may not be encouraging, but at the end of the day, you can only limit it if you have clear responsibility, and in a legal sense, that means liability. Right? And that's exactly the tricky thing when you have technological patterns, speed patterns, kind of twisted into a behavior. And that's the difficulty also with AI. So consequently, what we see already is that there are already some ideas popping up to create something which is an AI personality. Why? Because if an AI personality is almost treated in very simple terms, like a legal person, like a company or corporate structure, then it's much easier to kind of link liabilities to a certain behavior. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. I think that is actually a very promising way forward to kind of explore that further. And if we manage to create something such as an EU-wide AI personality, that would potentially bring us closer to, let's say, a system where we understand each other with the basic denominators, as our colleague has already mentioned.
Thank you, Professor.
May I quickly add just one more idea to this? Thank you for bringing it up. I think we also need a little bit of shift in paradigm. I think after all these years of experience with digitalization, with the new regulations that was adopted by our market, thanks to efforts of NPR and so on, we have mastered part of the process, and that is how to run the payment since it touched the banking system, like how to execute it, make sure there is no tampering inside the banking system. But what we have not mastered yet, and where we need to work, is also something that one of my colleagues mentioned here, we need to start looking at the emotions of the clients to understand when they are pressed to execute a payment that can be actually a fraudulent payment. And I will refer, there is a study showing that in UK in 2024, actually half of the fraud comes from authorized push payments, meaning that the user knowingly submitted that payment with all the authorization steps that were requested by the bank or by the financial institution, but still the payment was fraudulent. So I think we have mastered one segment, but we need now to work together to actually cover the rest.
We come back to the first word, trust, yes?
Yes.
To work together. Because I think it's we have a limit time. Please, each of you, dear colleagues, give some perspective for your point of view according to the topic which we have it in our panel, cybersecurity and digital identity.
I will say that currently Central and Eastern European have a lot of opportunities given the fact that they are ahead of time in many aspects. One colleague before mentioned ahead of time in regulatory framework. This is a blade with two cuts in my perspective. Regulatory framework needs not to prohibit innovation. We have speaking about Romania, we have a set of people that are capable of advancing and using technology in the proper way. We just need to have a posture and work together as, let's say, different industries in order to ensure that we maximize and monetize the benefits that our country is having right now. And okay, we speak about instant payments, we speak about cybersecurity. I think we all know it's not about having the technology. Technology is abundant nowadays. It's about having the strategy put into action and not using technology without a proper governance. I mean, if you have technology but you don't have a technology that is ethical, that is responsible, that is transparent, then you never get the trust of your customers, which is the currency we have all spoken about today.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
I'd like to go back a bit to the previous point. Before looking at supranational solutions, before looking at national solutions, there are things that the market and the financial service players can do easily in the next 1 to 2 years. First, breaking up the silos, especially in compliance. AML, anti-fraud platforms that are completely separated in this world is very hard to operate like this. Adding AI-driven adaptive rule-based systems to these efforts is something that can easily be done. There are systems that are being built by vendors now, and they can be implemented in the next 6 months. If you start a project, this is another thing that can help you reduce fraud. Looking at behavioral authentication, so coming back to the fact that a lot of the fraud is driven by user actions that in the eyes of the current systems, it's actually proper user action and they're real and they're done by the proper people. But then you can look at the behavior and at the number of data points, geolocation, the accounts that the money is going to end up with, and then you're gonna get a different behavioral pattern. So this is going to help you properly do double authentications, enhanced authentications for all these payments to reduce this exposure to this kind of situations. So there are actions and there are technical solutions that are either being developed or they're already in the market that can be taken today, implemented until we can build a framework nationwide, maybe to Transfond or other institutions under the National Bank, and obviously at an EU level to cover shared information and to cover shared KYC or shared anti-fraud efforts. But until then, there are actions that can be done immediately, and they should be done in order to adapt to this new world.
And what about perspective? Your perspective about digital payments? What is your opinion?
Well, generally, we're going to see a lot more embedded digital payments, not only from traditional financial service players, from banks or fintechs. We're going to see a lot of digital payments that are being processed by satellite financial institutions to retailers, to insurers, and we're going to see a lot more packaged goods. So this has to come with embedded compliance. They have to go hand in hand. So basically, the regulators and the markets will have to adapt to a series of new players emerging, which are going to have a lot of new distribution models to a bigger subset of the population, and probably not so much of the muscle to protect those markets that they're targeting. So this is going to be quite a big challenge, but at the same time, we're going to see an uplift in volumes, which is going to be very interesting for the environment.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Hard to add anything, right? So I think for us as a bank, as banks, for sure in the next couple of years we will feel a lot the tension between the need to have this instant payment system and the need to fight fraud, especially authorized payment fraud, because they are somehow conflicting objectives. And we will feel this tension, and we will need to scale up the infrastructure in order to be capable of managing this problem. The same goes with customer identity, digital or not. Here it's also something that requires a lot of effort. What I would say that for us at least, cybersecurity, it's a big thing that we really need to look into it more and more. And the point is that with artificial intelligence, what is happening is that the cost of a cyber attack is decreasing very much. And if the cost of a cyber attack is decreasing very much, then the temptation of the attacker to do it, of course, will proportionally increase. And then our defense needs to be stepped up to reflect this decrease in the cost of an attack. This is one topic. And the second topic in this market, there was also a change in the last years. Now you have state actors playing this cybersecurity or cyber attack games. And of course, the mathematics for a state actor is very different than the mathematics for a private actor. So the barrier for a cyber attack is going further down, which means that we need to really scale up defenses. And this is not, it's also something a little bit conflicting with opening up towards the digital world, because on one side you are expected to open up, and on the other side you need to protect from whatever is coming on those particular channels. And the last comment from my side, because it was mentioned in the previous panel, and I really need to adhere to what has been said, meaning the FIDA. I think FIDA, which is somehow pushed a lot in the last days, personally, I do believe that this is something that it's detrimental to the financial sector, not only in Romania, and is detrimental from multiple angles perspective, meaning that besides the efforts to share a lot of data, there is an uneven playing field in utilizing the data. And I think till the moment this level playing field in data processing between the European companies, banks, and non-European players will be established, I think we are simply destroying value by doing so.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I would like maybe to add a small comment related to what Mircea mentioned. I think currently we are speaking at the same time about the pain and about the gain. Indeed, the cost of the cyber attacks decreased, but on the other hand, the fines that are imposed, especially in highly regulated industries, are huge. If I'm looking at the average cost of a data breach in banking, which is a second sector following healthcare in costs, we speak about 6.1 million. This is the reported number, and if we refer to mega breaches, which means breaches that affect more than 1 million users, then the cost can be up to 45 million. So the impact is huge. On the other hand, there is also a gain, because if we have instant payment and more transactions happening, it means that the business is increasing, and it means that If we are using the proper tools, which are properly governed and which we have the proper policies, let's say, imposed within our organizations, then this will allow also highly regulated sectors, but very competitive currently, like banking and financing, to innovate and identify new revenue streams, a thing that is currently happening as banks are looking in completely complementary, let's say, areas in order to become trusted and single point of contact for the customers. So, thank you
for your comment.
Yes, if I am to think a little bit about the future of payments, I would have to say that we already see a trend where actually in a, let's say, immediate future, somehow the physical payment instrument will become fully transparent. We will not have the need for a physical item to execute payments. This means that some protective measures that were taken by the banks to allow for those payments are basically evaporated. We need to invest more, and I think this is the good news, that investments will still be there. We still need to invest more to understand patterns, to understand behaviors, and to also, I will reiterate again, to share data, because we can't look at one event alone, a specific payment, without understanding its context. We need to understand the full context. We need to know what the behavior of that consumer is, of that customer, and if that payment is suspicious or not will be basically determined by his previous behavior rather than the usage of a plastic or a chip or some other thing.
Thank you.
We have a solution for that. We can speak after the
we can speak
of
afterwards.
Of course, our
sure.
panel have it completed picture
Of
for the needs and for solutions. Professor, you have the floor.
Maybe just two thoughts. I fully agree that the nature of payments will change. Whether the whole thing becomes more transparent remains to be seen. There's definitely a drive there. But if things sometimes become too transparent, then there are players that want to have it less transparent. So I think we should not neglect that part, okay? Just kind of saying everything is more transparent makes life more beautiful. I would really seriously warn about that. And we see already the first attempts kind of going into the other direction. And the second point, and that is probably worth really further exploring, we have heard it a couple of times today, but is technology really always neutral? Because if technology were neutral, then it would also be much easier that technological systems would understand each other and that certain players would not always stick to their own technological systems. So consequently, but that is probably something for next year's conference, the question whether technology per se, as it's also put, by the way, in regulation, whether that is always neutral, remains to be seen as well, and is probably one of the biggest challenges.
Thank you, Professor. Of course, we are in the moment to close this panel. Remain with some keywords before trust, identity, digital payments, challenges, and all the time we have it, like today, our colleagues panel mention it, solutions, yes. Because in this kind of challenges, we try all the time to be innovative and to try to identify the good solution, the best solution for the ecosystem payments. Thank you so much. We pass now, Director Negra, you have the floor.
Before closing this panel, thank you very much for your presence here. I have a question for all the panelists here. We have the big tech here, we have the big bank here, we have the small fintechs here, we have the academic, and we have the technology which dealing with fraudulent transaction and AML and KIC. We have several databases all over across the globe. We're talking about interoperability. You see a use case to address this problem here in Romania with an academic level, with the banking sector and tech companies to sit on the same table and to write down a plan how to take all the databases all over across the world, including KIC, AML, including probably the fraudulent type of consumer that are moving from a bank to another, to put in the same basket in Romania. Probably on Romanian Banking Association, other authorities, or National Bank of Romania. For banks and to financial entities to be very easier for them to interrogate cheaper and safer these databases? Because right now the costs are quite high. And we're talking about milliseconds before you make a payment and to take the decision. How you see this?
100%. I fully agree there's an opportunity to do this. I think RoDetect is opening up the landscape and is opening up the pathway and making it, let's say, socially acceptable to share data. And I think on the basis of this, you can actually add more data categories or more categories of compliance, maybe in the same framework, maybe in a different framework to the Romanian Banking Association. But you have to bring the cost of compliance down, because as you have to deliver it in real time, the cost is going up because you're training models on it, you're using more expensive infrastructures. It's not just racks anymore, it's GPUs that are super expensive in order to operate this system. So it's properly better to distribute this cost across the system. Secondly, you're pushing out players out of the market because of cost of compliance, like small banks or small fintechs and so on will never be able to compete with the level of technology that you need to have it applicable in order to face all the threats that we've been talking about and Mircea was mentioning, like synthetic identities and everything. The resources in order to counteract this kind of stuff are quite high. So I think there's an economic incentive. I think there's a social case in terms of acceptance that's being already done through this solution that we're building, that you are building. And I think there's an opportunity to work with the local market, us as suppliers, and with the local banks to actually make this happen in a quite acceptable time frame.
Also, when we have it access to the data, I suppose it's better to follow the same way like scientific database. When we have it completed rules, completed package rules, each of us we have in the real time the same data. And this means to respect the same regulation, to comply to the same, and finally to cover, to limit it, because it's not possible to eliminate the risk, to cover all the risk. Thank you so much.
I will play a little bit the devil's advocate this time here on this question, because I think, of course, we at Token, we are fully open to share data, and I think our model of business where we partner with other players on the market that could even be seen as our competitors, but we still partner with them and do common projects and products, show it that we are very open to partnerships. So I think sharing is very beneficial, but in terms of being able to prevent or kind of reduce fraud, I think we need to look more into decentralized systems where we can make decisions fast, exactly where the initiation happens, because otherwise we will fully again miss it. I will come back to my one of original statements. And I'm saying this because although this is a very good initiative, it will never kind of cover the whole market. And I'm talking here, for example, we have attack surfaces here today with telco companies. Why? Because banks, for their own digital apps, they rely very much on mobile apps that rely on a SIM card. The SIM card is provided by a mobile company, yeah? With no KYC or limited or different KYC under rule, under other regulation, yeah? And as long as we do not, let's say, get everybody on board, this initiative will just, again, cover part of the problem, not everything. So, again, this is just food for thoughts. We will fully be involved, and we would appreciate if we are invited to participate. But I think we need to look also at other dimensions. Thank you.
Yeah, personally, I think this is a very good initiative. Yes, I do agree that this is something that needs to grow in time, but we need to start from somewhere. Yeah, and I think, of course, we need to look. We have some good examples in the market. We have the integration with the fiscal authorities for the income, which was streamlining the lending and allow for digital lending, and there was a lot of customer satisfaction attached to it. We have the integration with the Ministry of Interior, yeah, for getting feedback on identity, which also improved a lot the processes and the customer access to digital services. So we need to start building up. I think having this kind of shared data is also not anti-concurrential, so we need to check this element as well. But I'm sure it's not, especially when we are discussing about protection. So having shared data about mule accounts, having shared data about fraudsters and so on and so forth, this is to protect the industry and to protect the customers. So I think there is a legitimate interest behind, and I totally agree with you that we need to start building on those models, and then to get also not only the information as such, but also some predictive outcomes.
Maybe I'd like also to add one dimension of the benefits that such a system could bring, and that is related with the sovereignty of the data, a topic that is so much discussed nowadays. So we are more than open to a conversation, but in the conversation we need also to be part of it. So you are part of the solution, not only of the problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.